Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And today we are here to talk about some interesting topics, I think. I like mine. I think mine's interesting. I know yours is more current topic type thing.
I hate mine. I hate it so much. Not really. I wouldn't do it if I hated it. I'm actually excited to cover mine. I'm going to be covering what I'm calling the Monolith Mystery.
All right, cool.
What are you going to be covering, Robin?
Oh, I'm covering Franklin Castle.
So you have a really long script this time.
It's not really long. It's much longer than my usual ones, but yeah.
Okay, right on. I actually don't have a super long script, but I am going to go first because I am kind of excited to jump into this. This week, I am doing something I don't normally do. I'm covering a topic that is not only new, it's technically news still. A lot of time, I like to go in for topics that have like some time that has passed since the like inciting incident, so to speak, time to be investigated, theories developed, scientists have time to test their hypotenuses, which is a joke from Workaholics. If you got that, give yourself 5 cool points. But seriously, I tend to go for topics that have more concrete fact, at least that has been studied, and less wild speculation happening, and that is not what is going on right now with these two things. So this week, let's talk about these weird monoliths popping up and then wildly speculate. I think it'll be fun.
Cool.
So, like I said, this is a fairly new development happening in our world today, in contemporary world, right? Like, if this was a movie, it would say, like, current day. Okay. I love watching, like, Independence Day, and it says that. You're like, oh, that was 1994. It's 2020 now. That's a long time ago. But it is happening right now. I wanted to cover this topic for a few reasons. The first is that a bunch of people are talking about it right now, and sometimes it's nice to just get in on a conversation as it takes place, rather than recap it years later. The second reason is that, and this is the most important one for me, a lot of folks are talking about this thing to me. People at work today were asking me questions about it because the people at work know that I have this podcast thing that I do and the nature of it. I've had friends ask me about it. My D&D group talked about it yesterday before we played. And most everyone asks me about it in this, like, did you hear about the alien artifacts that are being discovered mindset? And that sort of thing just automatically activates my skeptic side. Like, they're not alien artifacts. Probably. Most likely, I think.
I think the first one looks like one.
Well, I'm happy that some people just ask me what I think, rather than just asking me if I heard about, and then insert their conclusion here. That is just sort of applied in general to how people communicate to each other, and especially to me. When someone says, like, hey, have you heard about? And then if they just insert some wild claim there as if it were absolute fact, that's one of my pet peeves, and that has definitely been happening with this. So that can get annoying. There is no reason to act as if you know 100% what is happening when no one actually knows at that point. I get that people like to have clout and seem like they're an authority, but at the same time, it's like, you don't know. No one knows. So it's something that irritates me a little bit, and I'm going to cover the topic based off of that sort of motivation. It occurred to me that some of you may not actually know what the hell I'm talking about right now, so let's just start at the beginning. On November 18th, 2020, also known as 12 days ago, the Utah Department of Public Safety was out helping the Division of Wildlife Resources. They had their Arrow Bureau up in a helicopter, counting bighorn sheep in Utah. Now, I understand this is something the Division of Wildlife Resources keeps track of, but it also kind of sounds like a bet between two people on how many bighorn sheep were out there and like a gross misuse of government resources. Like, yeah, there's got to be at least 50. It's like, no, man, there's way more than 50. It's like, you want to bet? You want to bet right now? And those two people are like high-ranking officials, like, get the fucking helicopters, we're calling in help, we're going to count all these fucking bighorn sheep.
I'm sure it's to measure population and see how it's growing.
I mean, I know my scenario is not the case. I just wish it was because it's funnier and it sounds like the opening to a funny movie.
Okay.
So while they're up in the sky, soaring majestically through the clouds as one does when they fly, one of the biologists spotted something shiny off in the distance, and he was so intrigued, he told the pilot to turn the helicopter around so they could get a better look. And the pilot did. And I'd like to point out that if the pilot was like, nah, dude, just keep counting the sheep, we would not be talking about this right now. Also, I don't know how the biologist in the helicopter managed to count these sheep without falling asleep.
Wow.
I thought that was a really good joke. I was so excited when I wrote that. My next line is literally, "That's a good joke. Robin better fucking laugh." Anyways, the pilot, a man named Brett Hutchings, whipped that bitch around and went back to where the biologist spotted this mysterious object. And sure enough, when they returned, they spotted what appeared to be an odd, tall, shiny pillar in the middle of nowhere. So they landed the helicopter and went in to investigate. I'd like to point out that this is real. If you haven't heard the story yet, this is all true. When I say like, oh yeah, they just landed the helicopter, go check it out, that sounds fake to me, you know?
Yeah.
That activates my skepticism.
Too much power.
That is 100% what happened. It sounds like the beginning of some terrible movie on the Sci-Fi Channel. Also, side note, Sci-Fi changing their channel's spelling to SYFY was so annoying to me. I have not watched a single thing on the Sci-Fi Channel since they did that.
I think I have.
I hate you for
I've
it.
probably watched like Harry Potter when it's streaming on there.
Harry Potter's on Sci-Fi? That's just so wrong. Anyways, upon landing this helicopter on the ridge above the object, 3 of the biologists descended the rocks to investigate. 2 of them would investigate the object while the other one was essentially the cameraman. And this is where it comes in handy, where I always say, like, there's a cell phone in everyone's pocket. Why don't anyone take videos of these things? That's exactly what happened for this. What they saw was a monolith, which is an obelisk, a column, or a large statue formed of a single block of stone. So keep that definition in mind, because if this thing doesn't actually fit that definition, it is not a monolith. I would just like to point out, despite the fact that I have named my topic The Mystery of the Monoliths, or whatever the hell I decided to go with. So this object was about 10 feet tall, as evidenced by the photographs that you can see on our Instagram/Facebook of these gentlemen investigating it. One actually wound up standing on the shoulders of another so they could get up to the top of it and just look at how it appeared. Side note, its exact dimensions, according to the internet, are 291 centimeters by 58 centimeters by 58 centimeters, which is, in inches, 114.5 inches by 23 by 23. So it is very tall. That's just over 9.5 feet tall.
Cool.
So they took this video of what they were seeing and they put it up on social media, and almost immediately news outlets picked up this story and started talking about this unknown monolith in the middle of nowhere. And folks out there had a variety of reactions. Some immediately took these pictures and turned them into memes, which I admire very much. They turned this giant monolith into a street sign or a bus stop or an ATM, which I thought was hilarious. Some decided on the other end of the spectrum that it meant that this was the end of the world. They're very few and far between, and it's pretty obvious that those people tend to do that when literally anything happens that seems kind of weird. Others thought, hey, I should go find that thing. And find it they did. The first thing I noticed folks doing personally when all this popped off was searching via Google Maps to see if they could locate it. It was almost like an Easter egg hunt was on for the area that they knew was being searched.
So when it comes to Google Maps, though, it has to be like updated with new imagery for you to find it on Google Maps, right?
Correct. Which is going to lead into some interesting facts here. So after some time searching, the internet sleuths were actually able to locate it on Google Maps, which meant a few things. The first was that people were going to see this thing up close. Now that they had located where it was via Google Maps, they were going to be able to map their way there. The other is that folks were going to go through the archived images from Google Maps and see when it appeared. It's basically like you're just taking the screenshot from the most recent update and going back through until the object disappears, which is exactly what they did. And it turns out this thing did not just mysteriously appear the day it was discovered. Google Maps actually has it on the satellite photos as far back as October of 2016. Between August of 2015 and October of 2016 is when it appears. So August of 2015, it ain't there. And October of 2016, it is. So it was either installed or dropped off by aliens, or pushed through the Earth's crust by the mole people, or hammered down from the Earth's core by the lizard people, because we all know that the gravity is upside down if you're in the Earth's core. That's obvious. The next thing that happened is that people went out to find this thing in person and investigate it themselves. I am curious, if this was in Nevada, nearby, what would you have done? Would you have been like fucking road trip? Okay, cool, because I definitely thought that when this started popping off and I saw like the red rocks surrounding it, the first thing that came to my head is how far away is this from us? Because I kind of want to go. And then I Googled it. I'm like, nah, like I'm not up for 12 hours of driving that noise. So I'm happy to hear that. So if another one pops up and it's nearby, let's say within 2 hours of driving distance, we'll just go. One man named David Serber was actually able to identify where it was very early into this whole thing unfolding and drive/hike there. He had several requests from friends when he told them, hey, I'm going to go check on this thing, on what they were curious about, and he checked on those. This is the part in the show, like that moment in school when the teacher says, this is important, pay attention. And I know our audience, and you are likely the type of people that I was, where when they heard that, all of a sudden your brain started going through random things, and then you came to, and it's like, and that was the important thing, and you just missed the entire thing. So what I'm saying to you now is focus up for a minute, or you're going to have to rewind the episode at some point, because these are important facts to know prior to the crazy speculating that's going to happen after the fact section. So the first thing he checked was, is it magnetic? Why would you want to know this? Well, because it helps narrow down what kind of metal it is. And the answer to that is no, it is not magnetic. He took kitchen magnets and a few more strong magnets and he tried to stick it onto the side of it. Not magnetic. So the second thing was, is it discernible what kind of metal it is? Is it some sort of mysterious surface? Does it look like something related to what us Earth people could identify it as? And while I cannot confirm if he did any testing on it, he stated that he is almost 100% certain it is aluminum. Side note, aluminum is not magnetic, so that would totally fit the case.
Yep.
The third is, was it in fact one piece? Is it actually a monolith? Is the actual question here. So the answer to that one is a big old no.
Really?
It is 3 separate sheets of supposedly aluminum that are all riveted onto some substructure beneath the shiny surface. Like there's actual rivets in it along the seams that you can see.
But you have to look real close.
Not really. Like, and I'm going to have pictures on our Instagram/Facebook of this. You'll notice any close-up picture you can totally see not only the rivets on the sides, but since it is this
like
obelisk that's a triangle where there's 3 pieces that are meeting, where they're supposed to meet on the angles, there's a visible gap. Like, they do not touch. They get close, but you could like probably put your finger in there. And if you go to this guy's Instagram, which I highly suggest you do, you can see his full video of him just like going around it and showing you what it looks like.
What's his Instagram?
He's using a fisheye lens, so it's a little bit distorted. But I would go to
David Serber _ David spelled the traditional way, and the last name is Surber on Instagram.
So in the video he records, he actually knocks on it to see if it's like one solid piece or if it's really thick. And it is also not one solid piece. He actually says it feels like cardboard. It feels very flimsy.
Because it's a thin sheet of aluminum.
And then whatever is underneath it apparently doesn't have much substance to it. It sounds hollow,
Can
in
you
fact.
push it over?
Probably. Upon closer examination, the object seems to have 2 holes that did not have rivets in them at the top. So almost like it was incomplete, or someone had removed it, or maybe in transporting it, they had fallen out. It's kind of unclear. Like I mentioned, the edge where the sheets of metal are supposed to touch, they're not welded and they're not smooth. There's just a very visible gap. So it definitely has this sort of janky feeling to it. I shouldn't say janky because we're going to get to the second monolith and that one's definitely janky. It feels much less mysterious after watching the video. And also in this video, he was one of the first people to get out there, but he wasn't the first. Mm-hmm. He said when he got out there super early in the morning, he was there for 10 minutes alone with it. And then it was just like kind of a steady stream of people showing up to look at it.
Wow.
It wasn't super crowded, but you weren't going to be alone basically after a certain amount of time. The thing is also covered in handprints. It's kind of gross. For the time that it's actually up, the pictures start having worse and worse wear and tear on this thing. Like people are scratching it up. You can tell people are messing with it.
That's probably why it's not there now.
I'm guessing whoever put it up was just like, I'm taking it down because they're ruining it. And like, I was going through some pictures of people like posing with it and doing stupid stuff. And like, it starts to look pretty ratty. Like it was this shining object that was so visible from the sun hitting it that a helicopter was like, we need to go check that out. And after like, I don't know, 7 days of human exposure, it's like, wow, that looks like shit now. And it was there for 4 years.
Do you think it was a social experiment?
It might have been. And we're going to get to some wild speculation later once we get all the facts in on this. Because there is another one that we're going to have to cover. So just when you thought the whole thing was starting to calm down as people were starting to go see it, like we just mentioned, it disappeared. No one knows how. No one noticed. It was just gone. And in place of it, and this might be on the Instagram, I have a lot of pictures and we can only post 9. But in place of it is like a little tiny piece of what this thing was made out of that's in a triangle, and it's leaned against rocks. So it's kind of like a little mini monument to the monolith that used to be there. Say that
right.
10 times fast. Little mini monument to the monolith.
Okay.
So everyone's like, okay, now all of a sudden it's mysterious again because it disappeared. How did that happen? So it's kind of hard to understand, and like, where did it go? And because that question popped into everyone's head, this next part takes on more significance.
Okay. I just want to... Why did no one have a camera facing this thing to watch what was going on?
Like, why did no one
it?
set up a time-lapse camera or anything like that? I don't know. Maybe it's the middle of nowhere and there's just no guarantee you're going to get your camera back. You know? It's not like you can put a teddy bear out there like, no one will notice the nanny cam when there's a teddy bear in the middle of
just
nowhere.
Camp and let your...
Or you're just going to stay there and guard it at this point? It's kind of funny because they asked some of the people who were like the authorities about the land, like, are people allowed to go visit? They're like, this is America. People can do whatever they want. Which was basically them saying like, we're not protecting this stupid thing that we found in the middle of nowhere. Like, go see it if you want to. And it wound up disappearing. So
someone could have just been like, I'm taking this.
It's very possible it wasn't removed by whoever put it there. It's very possible someone's like, I'm putting this in my fucking basement. Which is what I would have done at 19 if I lived nearby. I'd have been like, that thing is fucking mine, dude. So, this thing disappears, and then what happens? Another monolith pops up. And where, you ask? Well, obviously it's I'm gonna try and do this right, the Baca Domani hill in the city of Piatra Neapt in the wonderful country of Romania. Pretty sure I butchered all of that, and I apologize sincerely, which is sincerely. I'm so tired right now. Its location is just outside of an ancient fortress. Also, I Googled when you can use the word ancient on things. It's from 3000 BC up to 500 AD, and this thing was definitely around before then. It was supposedly destroyed by the Romans in 200 AD.
Wow.
So not only did it exist definitely in the ancient category, it was destroyed before the ancient category was done. It's not standing. A lot of the articles I was reading online acted like this fortress was still there. It's like, no, this is the ruins of a fortress. It's not just some ancient fortress that people still occupy. It's a tourist attraction. You know, it's like an archaeological dig site. It's not a building that someone just had this monolith pop up next to. So when I thought about how far away it was, the first thing that came to my mind, and I know everyone is different, the first thing that popped into my head is, I wonder if Romania, where this thing is the exact opposite side of the world from where it was in Utah. Because there's just this sort of mindset.
Whoa, how insane would that be?
Right? I was like, that would be nuts. So I checked. There's a website you can go to where you can
not?
check where the exact opposite is on. I should have known right away it's not, because they're both in the northern hemisphere.
Ah, yes. Okay. Well, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Even so, it does not line up, where if it's in the northern hemisphere and it was like a bar that just ran across, it still doesn't line up. It's nowhere near it. So the exact coordinates of the monolith in Utah, when it was there, which it no longer is 38.343073 latitude, negative 109.666192 longitude. Dead serious here. I found the thing on Google Maps and I pinged it and I took its latitude and longitude and found the exact opposite point on the planet. And that point is actually in the Indian Ocean to the southeast of Madagascar. So basically in the middle of nowhere.
So I work with geodatabase systems. That's my job. And when I think about you pinging on Google Maps, my brain immediately goes, there's a plus and minus. It's not exact. So.
Okay, cool.
So, I mean, it could be, you know.
This is the latitude and longitude that Google gave me for the marker that I set. So I went out a lot of decimal points because this is the actual latitude and longitude approximately.
All right.
That the guy who found it gave when he's like, here's the route to get there. And if you have GPS, here's how you can locate it.
Okay.
So obviously there's plus or minus, but it's not like plus or minus 10 miles. It's plus or minus a very small distance.
All right.
So regardless, the opposite point on the planet, give or take 10, 20, 100 miles, it's still the middle of the fucking Indian Ocean. So obviously there's not going to be another monolith. And if there is, no one's diving down there to check. The Romanian monolith, though, I don't have an exact location. I have a general whereabout. So I was like, okay, well, maybe the Romanian monolith will give me a clue as to where the next one is going to pop up. So I Googled where the exact opposite point on the planet was for that one. And it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean to the southeast of New Zealand. And when I say southeast, like roughly sounds like it's nearby, it's like halfway between the bottom of the world and New Zealand. And that's what it was for Madagascar too, just FYI. Side note, this particular point is suspiciously close to the underwater prison of the great old one known as Cthulhu.
Really?
And I think it really is. And and the bloop, where the bloop happened too. And I think we're really starting to unravel the mystery now that we're starting to think outside the bun here.
So it's in Romania. Is it near that Baciu forest that I
don't
covered?
think so.
Okay.
It is in like a natural forest though.
All right.
So I'm not sure. I didn't check for that one. The monolith in Romania does have some notable differences to the one in Utah. I don't have a wonderful video and a diligent Instagrammer to try and document this, but there was someone who took a video of this when it was quote unquote discovered, and it does show several things of note. So one, the base where it goes into the ground is not as clean. So the base where the other one went into the ground was like really seamless. It looked really good. This one
it's been there for 4 years.
Yeah, this one you can still see like the debris where they dug up the ground to stick it in.
Well,
and I'm like, that's just fucking lazy.
They didn't spit on it. No. So the thing with this other one is that it looks like someone just took a sander and just went and just did all those squigglies all over it. And
let me get through this because there's so many other things that I didn't realize until I watched the video. It didn't appear to be the same height as the previous monolith, and the estimates for people who visit it say it's around 13 feet high, so they missed the height by about 3.5 feet. If they're trying to make it identical and make everyone think, oh my god, it moved. 3, there's not a clean surface, like Robin stated. This one would not reflect light and be this beacon that would catch people that are going by in a helicopter. It appears to have been worked over, like she mentioned, with like some rotating steel brush, or as one person who was pretending to be an expert on the internet claimed, a metal blowtorch. It makes some of these like weird circles, almost like when you're doodling in your notebook and you keep making, it looks like an old telephone cord, like when phones had cords still. Mm-hmm. And like it just loops but keeps going.
Well, you know
and
how
it just goes up and down the 13-foot structure.
You know how diners used to have that metal sheeting? That's what it reminded me of. That polished metal sheeting that was polished in a certain way so you could see the curves.
Yeah, except it's messier.
Yes.
And it's not neat looking at all.
No.
The fourth thing I found interesting, the seam actually appears to be tighter where the edges meet than the original one.
All right.
It looks like it might have been spot welded or riveted. Like, I don't think it's riveted because I can't zoom in too far, but it looks like it's actually touching, but there's dark spots that are spaced out evenly that looks like it's been welded in some way, shape, or form.
All right.
All right. 5. It seems like there are spots where it's welded rather than riveted. So it's not just that where it touches, it's being touched up like with welds. There's spots where there would be rivets on the other one that have completely different markings. That's really odd.
So you're saying the first one's super pretty, this new one just not
First one's
pretty.
minimalist, and the second one is copycat for sure. The sixth thing is that there's this weird line of gouges on one of the sides of it that's about 2 to 3 feet from the ground. It almost looks like there was supposed to be more rivets or more welds, or there was a mistake and they realized they didn't have enough time, so like, fuck it, just leave it. It's mysterious. So this one's just like, it's a dirty imitation. This one sounds hollow when it's knocked on as well. And this is like when you see a recipe on Pinterest and you make one and everyone that you show it to is nice. And they're like, wow, it looks great. But no one would ever mistake your version for the Pinterest version if they were set side by side. It's just borderline not a fail, basically.
Yeah.
So now the Romanian monolith did not last very long at all.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, it was spotted on November 26th and it was removed in the evening of November 27th.
No way.
Because this area that it was placed is like protected, it was placed illegally. So it came out pretty quickly that people weren't happy about it. And they're like,
gotcha. No
one should have put this there. And when we find out who did it, you're in deep shit. And then it got taken away and they're like, just so you know, like, we don't investigate certain things that are owned by a certain part of the government. So basically it was like, well, you removed it, so all is forgiven.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because my impression of this was the first one disappeared. The second one popped up. The second one popped up November 26th, was taken down the night of the 27th, but the first one disappeared on the same night, which I found really interesting. So it's not like it teleported.
No.
It's like someone saw this happening and thought, I'm going to make one too and make this really weird. They got in trouble. They took it down. And then the original one in Utah also got taken down. So the information was not received really on our end, at least in the States. It was just like, okay, well, one appeared in Romania, and then I just found out it disappeared tonight. I thought it was still there, to be honest with you.
Okay, so this thing existed in 2016, that first one.
Correct.
And it was so nice and so shiny in 2020. So how does it stay clean?
I think that's
when
why
it rains and it. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's why the materials were chosen, so that it wouldn't corrode in the desert because there's lack of moisture. And I don't think sand would stick to it because it has a very slick surface. That's also why it wasn't grooved like it was in Romania, because then there's no surface tension for things to stick to it. I'm sure there was some wear and tear on it, but like the initial pictures, it looks really clean.
Yeah. Well, when I leave my car outside.
Your car's not made of aluminum.
Just saying, everything sticks to it.
Yeah, but that's different. Your car's completely different. Your
if
car has paint on it.
If I left a Coke can outside in the dirt and it got rained on,
there
dirt
would be deterioration.
Stick to that Coke can.
That's totally true. So who knows? Maybe it was coated with some sort of lizard blood from the lizard people. I don't know. So what it really comes down to is, what are these things? And I think the most likely guess is that the first one was a piece of art. That was the first thing my mind went to, is like, it sounds like art that was placed out in the desert. And the second one was this copycat that was hastily constructed after the first was discovered. And some folks likened the original structure to sculptures that were created by the late artist named John McCracken. He created solid color shapes that were very clean, including monoliths, some of which actually looked like this with shiny surfaces.
All right.
They're gorgeous, man. His art is amazing. The problem is that he passed away in 2011.
Oh, wow.
5 years before this thing popped up, because it popped up between August of 2015 and October of 2016. It's possible someone put this up as a tribute to him. Maybe it was something of his that was unfinished. And they're like, let's just put it somewhere. And what's really interesting about this whole thing is Patrick McCracken, which is John's son, stated to the New York Times that his father told him in 2002 that, quote, he would like to leave his artwork in remote places so it could be discovered later.
Wow.
Which is kind of what happened here. And
is
I wonder,
the son still alive?
Son's still alive, yeah.
So if he hasn't come out and said, yo, that was me, you know, it probably was not him.
I'm just saying, like, everyone's heard about this at this point. So if he has some art that he'd like to sell, he's going to get a lot of attention on it. And I wonder if this was something in his will or something like that. Where it's like, hey, like 5 years after I'm gone, go drop this thing and these exact coordinates.
Pretend it was aliens.
Yeah. Or just don't say anything. Like, it's performance art, you know? Art is just weird. Like, my friend used to be like, anything can be art. And then he would leave his trash all over my house and be like, it's art. My empty beer cans are art. You know who it is, don't you?
No.
Oh, that's Lucas for sure.
Oh my gosh.
He'd leave his fucking beer cans everywhere and be like, it's art, Adam. I'm like, it's fucking laziness. So, he was right, though. I was also right. So, what it comes down to is the last mega mystery I think people have in their heads isn't really what was it. Now that you've seen what it is and you've heard what it is and people have visited it, it's how did it disappear? How did no one notice? And I'm guessing, personally, that it wasn't crazy heavy. Like, a few guys could probably manage it, and fairly quickly if they knew what they were doing, which they most likely would if they installed it in the first place, you know?
The thing with it not being heavy is, if everybody was going to visit this thing, putting their hands on this thing, they could have just knocked it over, but they didn't knock it over.
How do you know no one did?
Because someone would have said they knocked it over.
It is covered in scratches, like the day before it disappears. Like, it looks like shit. I think a lot of people knocked it over. And the hole that they dug to put it in,
it was not that
it's
big.
It's not very deep at all. It's super, super shallow. So it would not shock me if it fell over.
Okay.
But
okay. That being said, 2016, it's been out there for 4 years. But
people just found it. Like, if someone found it in 2017,
but the wind could have blown it over.
I think that's why it was built the way it was. It's actually in this, like, valley, where it's at the tip of a valley surrounded by rocks.
Okay.
Where I don't think the wind would affect it too much. Like, wind blows through a valley, but I think it would blow over this particular spot and down into the valley rather than, like, go directly into a fine point. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know too much about how wind works in valleys, but I think the spot was chosen for a specific reason. I'm not a scientist, no. So, my wild speculation on the Utah one specifically is that it was some form of light wood. That's why it sounded so hollow when the guy knocked on it, and he said it sounded really flimsy. And it was chosen specifically to keep the weight down, but it was hardy enough to support the weight of the aluminum sheet that's on it. And that's it. I think it was very minimalist. It's like, okay, I just want this thing to look very shiny and very clean. And that's all they did with it, whoever it was. And maybe they are connected. I think what it comes down to is the original thing that really freaked people out when the second one popped up is they must be connected. The more I researched it is they're definitely not connected, but there's no definitely here. Like, if they were, what would be the significance of these two things?
Ley lines.
I hate you. Like, what about why were they placed where they were placed? It's one thing to place something in an area where it's not going to corrode and maybe the wind doesn't affect it. But if they are connected, then why was one in Romania and one in Utah? And I feel like that would be important. And like I said, like my mind immediately went to, are they on opposite ends of the planet? And maybe it's because of my natural love for symmetry that would make sense to have them on opposite ends. And if this is art, like the observation of the pieces alone would be mysterious. But if you realize there was two of them and they're on exact opposite points on the planet, it would create this image of a monolith that ran through the interior of the planet, you know?
That'd be cool.
The idea of the work of art being something unseen at that point, it's like the work of art isn't even the two 10-foot objects that you had on the surface of the planet. It's the image that people would have in their head of what connects them through the core of the planet that doesn't actually exist, you know? Like, that's, I think, why my brain goes to that. It started thinking, like, symmetry and art in that direction, but that's not the case here. So I tried to go out of my comfort zone and start going the conspiracy theory mode and thinking, like, okay, why would these two things be where they were? The first thing I came up with was maybe this is some crazy type of marketing. Like, we're saying, like, maybe this guy's son has art that he's trying to sell, or he's, like, trying to gain attention or something like that. And that would be genius. And it reminded me of the movie we watched last night. I watched it. Robin kind of watched in the background, which I saw when it came out, called Chronicle. It's from 2012. And it reminded me of it because the marketing campaign for that movie was to make drones that were in the shape of people and fly them around New York so people would think someone was flying in the sky. And people saw it and they freaked out. And eventually they came out and said, like, yeah, that was us. Go see our movie. And people were a little bit pissed off, but, like, it actually worked really well. That movie was really not known until that happened. It cost $12 million to make, which is not a lot of money for a big Hollywood movie. It was projected to make $8 million back, which means it was going to lose a third of its budget, which is horrible, you know?
I mean, Michael B. Jordan's in it.
He's in it, but he's brand new. He's a brand new actor. If this movie hadn't done well, he might not be as well known as he is right now. He might not have gotten the roles he did because cost 12, projected to make 8. In the first 3 days, it made $22 million.
Oh my God.
Domestically, which means in the United States, it made $64.5 million during its lifetime. Worldwide, it made $126.6 million. So just by building some drones and bringing some attention to it and having people freak out, it definitely surpassed the expectations and was considered a success. They never made a second one as far as I know, but I think they just didn't release it to theaters maybe, and they probably have like 6 or 7 of them on like Amazon Prime Video if you scroll to the right for long enough. So that totally worked. Maybe it's something like that, but maybe they're going to drop a remake of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's why it's a Monolith. But they'd have to change the title because that was 19 years ago.
They're going to re-release The Fifth Element, and these are 2 of the elements.
Why would they change them from something handheld? They're not going to be able to fit it in the Diva now.
Oh my God.
But like I said, you guys should watch Fifth Element
if you have never seen Fifth Element, you need to watch that movie to understand.
And if my buddy Garrett is listening right now because he listens to most of the episode, Fifth Element is a good movie. You're wrong. I hate you. Now, if you were to take both points where these things are, where they've shown up, and this is my last conspiracy theory attempt to try and make sense of something that's probably not going to be figured out. But if you take both the points and you do the thing where you take where they are on the opposite ends of the planet, they actually intersect. Those lines do. Because if you go from Utah all the way to the Indian Ocean, and you go from Romania, which is on the other side of the planet, all the way to the Pacific Ocean, they go in different directions at that point. Mm-hmm. So it's like an X. And where they intersect is actually in our backyard. Get the fuck out of here.
You're lying.
I'm totally lying. No, they don't. It's really hard to draw lines on Google Maps when they're that far away. It's a pain in the ass. So I had to sort of eyeball it. But wouldn't it be crazy if there was like a crash of lightning right now and you're like, what the fuck is that? And you looked out the window, it's like Cthulhu's eye, like Jurassic Park though. And you're like, oh my God.
I would shit my pants.
So yeah, I couldn't draw the lines. I don't know exactly where they intersect, but I got a good idea of like rotating the planet repeatedly with there's 4 points on it. And it would actually be in the Pacific Islands, just north of Australia, like Indonesia, Philippines region. So if something crazy happens there, or if another monolith pops up there, I am a fucking genius. I just want it noted right now. Or that's terrifying, because people have been messaging me like, dude, I listened to the pandemic episode on the Spanish flu before the pandemic started, and like, it's really creepy that you talked about it. I'm just like, I talk about a lot of shit every week, so sooner or later, one of those things is going to pop back up. But this is definitely a topic we're going to have to check back in on in the future. And maybe more of these things will show up. You don't know. But calling it alien is kind of an insult to alien craftsmanship at this point. Unless you think they fly here in saucers that are built like shit.
Well,
So,
I mean, from everything that the internet has taught me and that movies have taught me, you know, they are afraid of water. They can't survive in
all
water.
aliens are afraid of water.
And
Battle Los Angeles. Hello. They came here to take the water.
or like World War Z, they just can't breathe our germs.
I mean, that one makes sense. It's not World War Z, by the way.
Or
World War Z
what?
is the zombie
Not
one.
World War
of
Z,
the
War
Worlds.
of the Worlds. World War Z is the one with the fast zombies.
I really
right?
like that ending in War of the Worlds, though. Spoilers if you haven't seen the movie or read the books for the last, 90 years. But it's like, they don't have immunities to all the diseases on the planet, so they eventually start to die during the invasion. Anyways. Who knows what the hell these things are? Who knows why they showed up? Who knows why they got taken down? All I know is we're in the end game of 2020 now, so anything is possible, and only
God.
time will tell. And that, my spooky friends, is the mystery of the monoliths.
It was a fun topic.
I enjoyed it, so I'm happy I did it. I don't typically do news stuff. I do history stuff, but this one was really good, and I hope you all enjoyed it. So,
Thanks.
before we move into our next topic, we are going to take a quick commercial break.
Welcome back to the other side of the episode. Before I get into my topic, I just want to give a shout out to our lovely patrons, Cody, Ethan, and Sam, and Andrew. You folks are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us and being such a big supporter of what we do, and we couldn't do it without you.
Absolutely. It's awesome that you folks believe in us. You want us to make content. It means a whole lot.
All right, so getting into my topic now. This week, I'm sticking around these here United States because I feel like past episodes I keep going to different countries on either side of the oceans,
When I write the copy for the episode, the blurb that's in the bottom, I had to write 10 weeks in a row a different variation of
across the pond.
Yeah, across the pond. Robin goes overseas, and I'm running out of shit to say. Please stay in the States.
All right, so across the country from us in Cleveland, Ohio, is what is known as Franklin Castle. Supposedly the most haunted house in Ohio. And now if you've been with us for a while, we've said, quote unquote, the most haunted over and over and over again, because everyone decides they're the most haunted XYZ in wherever, whatever time, whatever. We're gonna get into what makes this particular location haunted. And it's been featured on Ghost Adventures, so it must be haunted. And I think it was just featured in Ghost Adventures this year.
Okay.
So I have not seen this episode. I have no idea what they talk about in it. I did not want to see the video prior to writing this. I just saw a news article that was Ghost Adventures features da-da-da. I was like, okay.
I don't
whatever.
really want to knock anyone who watches Ghost Adventures anymore.
I watch Ghost Adventures, okay? I just
Mainly because I don't want to get in trouble with Robin and get beat up anymore. I just hate the show. It drives me nuts. I need that on the record again. It's so insincere. I hate it so much.
I think it is insincere. I agree with that.
Feels like a parody. If someone told me this is a parody show, I'd be like, it needs a couple more jokes, but yeah, it's pretty good. But when people tell me this is a real ghost hunting show, I'm like, no, it's not. Not at all.
It's funny. So at 4308 Franklin Boulevard in Cleveland, Ohio.
It's pretty good. Do you not have the latitude and longitude?
Nope, because plus and minus. Okay. So there is a Victorian-looking home whose history dates back to the late 1800s. 2020 now, so that's 220 years ago?
Yep.
All right. It all begins, late 1800s. I guess it's around 100-something years ago.
130 to 150 years ago.
It all begins with Hans Tiedemann, and this was the original owner of the building, the person that got it commissioned, built, everything.
Bad guy from Die Hard. Right, got it.
Yep. Wait, what's his actual?
Hans Gruber.
Okay.
Alan Rickman.
He was a German immigrant, grocer, and investment banker. He actually founded the Euclid Avenue Savings and Trust, which sadly no longer exists from what I can gather. I looked up this business license and it was dead. That's what it said. So I don't know.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. The house, whose official name is actually Tiedemann House. It's not actually Franklin Castle, though. On the front door, there's glass at the top of the front door. It says Franklin Castle.
I mean, I get the difference between the title of the home, the official name, and then whatever you have. I could put Boner Garage above our fucking house and it wouldn't be named Boner Garage.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So this house was built between 1881 and 1883. It is 4 stories, has 20 rooms, and about 80 windows.
Wow.
It's a pretty big place, I think. I don't know how many windows we have. We have maybe 10 windows, I feel like. Not that many. Well, maybe more than 10. I don't know. This is my mind rambling because I drank coffee at midnight, 1 a.m.
And she's trying to count the windows in our home while doing the episode.
All right. But that's a lot of space, I think. It could be 20 tiny rooms, but I'm going to assume it's a lot of space. During the Tiedemann family's time in the home, several of the members did pass away, as tends to happen with families over time. You stay in a place long enough, it just tends to happen. On January 15th, 1891, Emma, Hans's 15-year-old daughter, dies from complications stemming from her diabetes.
That's sad.
Soon after, and when I say soon, I mean only weeks later, Tiedemann's mother also passed away. During their time in the home, Hans and his wife Louise lose another 3 children.
Wow, that's so sad.
Carl, one of their eldest, was regarded to have been an everyday average young man before he moved into that house. So they move into that house, he starts acting a little weird, he leaves, and they start noticing that he suffers from quote-unquote maddening bouts of nervous tension. And these episodes get so bad to the point that he eventually commits suicide by jumping off a bridge. This guy, so many members of his family just pass away and he's just left alone. It's really sad. Louise herself passes away in her bedroom in 1895, allegedly due to medical complications. This room that she passed away in has since been dubbed the cold room because this room is 10 to 15 degrees colder than the rest of the house.
Wow.
There were rumors that Hans was responsible for her death, and those rumors later spread to him having to do with multiple other women's deaths, including his niece and a supposed mistress. So, at the same time, it's sad and morbid. So you're okay, is this guy's life really sad, or is he just real fucked up?
Right. It's getting a little suspicious, which means if it's actually not his fault, it's even more tragic.
Yes.
But I'm very skeptical.
Soon after the passing of his wife, he began extensive construction on the home, probably as a distraction from all the loss in his life, because he did lose so many people so quickly. The main addition during this construction was a ballroom that runs the length of the home on the 4th floor. There were also turrets and gargoyles that were added. And turrets, I mean those, I sent you pictures, but they're the big round additions on the building.
Right. Not machine gun turrets.
No. And I'm sure it was to add curb appeal. Everybody loves a good gargoyle. Some look absolutely terrifying that I've seen on churches and stuff like that, but some actually do look really nice. I think. You don't think gargoyles look nice?
I just like the phrase, everyone loves a good gargoyle.
Okay.
That should be the phrase. They should reboot the show Gargoyles, and that should be the phrase.
That would be such a good idea.
OM, is that a new thing? Trying that on for size?
G means gargoyle.
Wow.
Okay. So these additions kind of gave the home a more castle-like appearance, probably how it kind of picked up that Franklin Castle name. Rumor has it that other additions were created during these renovations, including hidden passageways, hidden rooms, and hidden doors, though none of these supposed additions have ever been discovered, except for there was a room under the stairs that was discovered in the 1960s that was filled with Nazi propaganda and Prohibition-era booze. which, you know, a weird mix, but okay.
I'm curious if this person was a collector or a sympathizer, you know, because a lot of collectors go crazy for shit like that. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen American Beauty, but like the guy's dad has like a
the next
Nazi
door neighbor.
plate. Yeah, he has like a plate that has the Nazi symbol on the back, and he's like, collectors are crazy about this shit. And I understand that a lot of the collectors are crazy about it because they're like sympathizers. They're like totally into that shit. But I wonder, it's like when you look for things that are collectibles, the most rare stuff always catches your eye. I'm not willing to throw this person under the bus quite yet, but he has a lot of strikes against him is all I'm saying.
Tiedemann is not the person, I don't think, because he was already dead, that put this stuff in
That
there.
would make sense, yeah.
All right, so so these hidden spaces, if they actually exist, are thought to have been used for Hans to meet his mistresses and kind of have his flings and things like that. Or even creepier, to commit murder. You know, secret rooms, all that fun stuff, to do secret things.
That's what 50 Shades is about, right? That's why they call it the Red Rooms, because it kills people in there.
When I was reading up on this, I was just like, this sounds like the Winchester house, because in the Winchester house, there's like secret rooms, doors that lead to nowhere, lots of different staircases.
A doorbell system that made you scream out loud in front of a bunch of
God.
strangers.
Oh, God, you guys. If you were there, you would have laughed at me. There were people on the tour that laughed at me, okay?
It's because she literally warned us she was going to ring the bell, but Robin wasn't paying attention to the tour guide. So she rang the bell and she fucking yelled like, ah! And everyone's just like, is this bitch serious?
Oh, my God. Anyway, so one of the rumors has it that he murdered his own niece in one of these hidden passageways, hanging her from a rafter leading away from the ballroom on the 4th floor. Legend has it that that niece was quote-unquote insane or just mentally unstable, and that he did it in some way out of love because he was quote-unquote putting her out of her misery, which it's really hard for me to believe.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. And if that actually happened, I think he just killed her to kill her or something like that. Other versions of the story claim that it wasn't his niece, but instead his illegitimate daughter, named Karen, murdered as a result of a dispute between Hans and her mother in order to cover up his indiscretions, which totally makes sense if that actually happened. And like I said, I'm totally going to add, like, if it actually happened, because it doesn't seem like there's any actual evidence that these things happen. It's just rumors and stories and things that get told over and over and over again. So it's thought that it's Karen's ghost that still wanders the hallways. But you never know. It could be his daughter or his niece, I'm sorry, that's wandering the hallways. I'm sure they can't just be like, no, it's Karen. You know, they're not going to whisper into an EVP or something, right? Then there is the story about the mistress. So supposedly it was one of the servants actually named Rachel. Legends have it that Rachel was supposed to marry another man when Hans murdered her on her wedding day out of jealousy. Rude, just saying. Many speculate that Rachel is the woman in black who seems to haunt the tower at the front of the house. Though Louise, his wife, is thought to have passed away due to her liver failure, there are still those that think Hans had something to do with her dying. And I think people saying that he's involved with all these murders, I think it's just rumors that stack on top of each other. And they're like, well, if you think he did this, maybe he did this too, you know? So it's really, I want to feel bad for this person, but what if he really did all these things, you know? Hans eventually sold the house to the local brewers, the Mulhauser family, and moved into an even fancier house on the lake with his new wife. Within a year, he was divorced, leaving his now ex-wife with nothing. In 1908, Hans was all there was left. There was no one to inherit his fortune. He died of a stroke. And something that I find pretty important to always keep in mind is you can't take it with you. Just saying. So he died alone with all this money and no one to give it to.
Is this your, like, pitch to spend money? Just spend, spend, spend?
It's all about those life experiences.
Wow.
I'm trying to rack up those airline miles, okay? For when all this stuff blows over and we can go to Japan again. All right. So the Mulhausers sell the castle to the local Nazis in 1913.
What?
Supposedly they used it for hosting meetings and parties. I'm sure back then they weren't called, they obviously weren't called Nazis. They weren't like, we're the local Nazis, what up?
I mean, they probably were actually called that back then before it was like, if you say that, you're not going to have a good
yeah,
time.
it's 1913, so.
Yeah, back then it's like, oh yeah, you're nothing yet. And then 20 years later, it's like, oh no.
So they used it to host meetings and parties. There are rumors or conspiracy theories, whatever you want to call them, that they were actually using the house as a spy headquarters and medical experimentation place
in 1913,
during World War I.
In 1913, though? I don't know. Because, like, the Kaiser was still in charge in 1913 of Germany.
But it's not in 19... I'm not saying, like, during 1913, just during World War I.
Okay. Well, World War I took place between, like, 1913 or 1914 and 1917 and 1918, so... It's not too far out. I'm just saying, like, the Nazi Party didn't have a whole lot of power then, so I don't know what the experiments they would have been running. Skepticism runs through my veins. I'm sorry.
A German shortwave radio was found hidden in the rafters of the house years later. Of course, the legends have it where more murder was conducted in the secret passages during their occupancy, which I find hard to believe. Even more, it's the location of a supposed politically motivated mass murder. Supposedly a group was gunned down during a dispute within the home, leading to the belief that ghosts continue to have politically heated discussions in the house. I find it hard to believe that a mass murder, like a big group of people getting gunned down, is not in the news. It's not in any medical reports. There's no police reports of like shootings, you know? So that I'm kind of like, don't necessarily believe it. But
I find it terrifying to think that I'd still have to have a political argument in the afterlife. Like, if that's still happening when I'm dead, I'm going to be so fucking mad.
And then there has to be some type of information for people to be like, no, dude, this happened. A whole bunch of people got shot down because they were fighting over, political beliefs or whatever, you know? The fact that there's no police reports makes me go, unless they buried all the bodies and hid them and didn't say anything. Or they owned
the police, so they swept it under the rug.
Oh, shit! That's true, too. Also, during the Nazi ownership of the home, there was a time where the house was actually unoccupied, like a long period of time where it was unoccupied. There may have been points where the owners rented out parts of the house to people at different times, but it for the most part, it was unoccupied. In an interview from the 1970s, a nurse claimed that she had visited the house in the 1930s, caring for an ailing attorney. While there in the house at night, she would often hear the sound of a small child crying, which absolutely terrified her. 40 years later, after her last visit to the home, she still states that she would never step foot in that house again. That's how scared that made her.
That's like Hill House shit right there.
In 1968, the house was sold to the Romano family, Mr. and Mrs. Romano, and their 6 kids. That's a lot of people. But it's a big house. So, I mean, it's a lot of house for that many people. The day the family moved in, the kids immediately went upstairs to play, as kids do. They don't give a fuck about helping you carry shit in. They soon came back down, asking for a cookie to share with their new friends.
Get the fuck out of here!
A little girl who was crying upstairs, and I just think that's creepy. Where it's like, first day we move in, the kids immediately like, oh, yo, we met this new person. She's upstairs, but we want to make her feel better.
Show her to me, and if I didn't see her, I'd be like, we're moving.
So
or in the house down.
When Mrs. Romano went upstairs to look for this girl, there just wasn't one to be found. There was no one there. While the Romanos lived there, they often heard organ music coming from different parts of the house, as well as footsteps in the hallways and on the stairs. They heard disembodied voices. In that ballroom, they heard people talking and dancing. The kids had a number of imaginary friends that they would play with. A very odd but explainable thing that seemed to happen was Mrs. Romano would find clothing randomly throughout the house, and it was like clothing that didn't belong to their time period. So it was like, where the fuck is this coming from? Eventually, they hired a Catholic priest to come and investigate after too many strange things happened in the house, and the priest refused to perform an exorcism, but did claim to feel something evil within the home. So they advised the family to move out as soon as possible. Instead of moving out, the family did what any family in a horror movie would do. they contacted a paranormal research society / organization. So they contacted the now defunct Ohio Psychical Research Group. And apparently the entities in the home didn't quite like them because they supposedly left the house in the middle of their investigation, terrified.
Wow. Not very professional, like, just saying.
The family sold the home in 1974 after living there for only 6 years. That's, I mean, how...
So a short amount of time, relatively speaking, when you have 6 kids and
yes.
You're like, oh, cool, we have a house big enough for the whole family now. And it's like, nah.
But we out.
Yeah, we're getting out of here.
They sold it to a man named Sam Muscatello, and his goal was to cash in on the ghosts of the home. He personally didn't believe in the ghosts, but he began offering haunted tours and collecting reports from those people that visited. They included seeing the woman in black, hearing strange sounds, including those of the crying babies, cold spots in different rooms, and objects just mysteriously vanishing. How you would know that object is vanished, it confuses me, because I'm like, did you stare at something on a counter and then the next second it's gone, you know? While trying to find those secret rooms and passageways, Muscatello came across a pile of human bones behind a panel in the tower. Some think that he actually planted them there himself.
I was going to say, how much can you trust someone who says they don't believe it, but they're looking to capitalize on it?
So some think he put it there himself for publicity. Others want to believe that Tiedemann was actually a murderer. Though there are some sources that say it could have been medical specimens that were used by a doctor that once lived there. The bones did date back like 100 years, so towards Tiedemann's time there. But again, it could have been like medical specimens, not for sure. Who knows? Despite this, the attraction wasn't as profitable as he hoped it would be. So he eventually sold the house, which then changed hands even more times. It eventually came into the hands of George Marchetta, who lived with his wife, Helen. He, too, gave tours of the home in attempts to profit off the stories and rumors. The visits also resulted in reports of encounters with the woman in black, as well as a newcomer, a woman in white. Ooh, They changed their clothes.
They updated it. New ghosts.
One visitor claimed she had actually been choked by an invisible entity while touring the house.
Consensually, or?
Oh my god.
It's because we just watched that Rick and Morty episode where the snakes all show up and one of them chokes Summer, and she's like, no one chokes me without my consent.
Despite all these things, Marchetta told reporters he still didn't believe in the hauntings. It allowed him to accept living there. Helen reported experiencing terrifying physical attacks. She was even pushed down the stairs at one point. She would place a tape recorder in a room and lock the door, thinking that it was someone playing tricks on them. And when they played the tapes back, there would be babies and children crying and the muffled sounds of a man yelling into the recorder. The Marchettas moved out after having a child. They're just like, we outie. They
had a kid, they're like, screw this.
In 1982, the building was added to the National Register of Historic Places. In 1984, the house was sold to a Michael DeVinco, the last husband of renowned actress Judy Garland.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He put $1 million into restoring the home over the following decade. It was sold in 1999, but was damaged during a fire set by an arsonist. Apparently, a man had wandered off the street and began setting small fires within each of the rooms. When questioned by police on his motives, he stated that he had to burn it down because, quote unquote, it was pure evil.
Wow.
The new owner attempted to repair the damage, but was never able to finish them. Then, in 2003, it was sold again to someone who wanted to turn it into a more historic building, not just a house. It never worked out. In 2011, the house was then rezoned, allowing it to be turned into a 3-family building, which means it could get turned into apartments, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
20 haunted units.
3 families, so you could probably split it between floors, maybe? I don't know. I don't know how that works. It was sold to a new owner with plans of renovation. So, I mean, there's a lot going on with this house, right? So it said that Franklin Castle is home to a number of spirits, the most common one seems to be the Lady in Black. And a lot of people think that it's members of Tiedemann's household. those that have visited or have resided within the home report hearing what are described as ghostly sounds or the sounds of babies or children crying. And some, like the Mercadas, were like, it's coming from the walls. That's what they said, like the sound was coming from.
This is very Hill House.
Yeah, when I was reading that stuff, I was like, chills. Yeah, and so these sounds are like going through the night, like the crying is coming through the walls, going through the night. I think that would just drive me nutso.
The calls were coming from inside the house.
Yep. There are footsteps that are heard through the halls, and even more frightening, the sound of screaming is more terrifying, at least for me, because the sound of screaming is so specific. And I mean, raise your hands if you can tell me how many times you've heard that same exact scream in horror movies, like that same clip of the woman's, like this high-pitched screeching, screaming.
Can you see all the hands being raised now?
Yeah. I always, anytime I watch a horror movie and someone's screaming, I'm like, that's not that person screaming. It's that clip. Yeah, it's that sound bite. And it's because screams are so specific and you can tell. And I was trying to search and see if there was a name for that particular scream, but the only one that I kept coming across is the Wilhelm scream.
Right.
And that's the one where someone's like falling down a hole like in Indiana Jones and you just hear that scream.
I'm pretty sure it's in Star Wars. I'm pretty sure it's like the most used sound effect that exists or something like that.
And that's oh my gosh. But that's the one I kept coming across, not the one from horror movies. I was so annoyed. Either way, screams are just very distinctive and kind of freak me out. And I don't think I've ever actually screamed except on roller coasters, you know, where you're like,
you screamed a few times out of fear in this house.
No, I gasp. I don't think I scream.
You yelp and sometimes you scream. I'm pretty sure you scream when that smoke detector exploded or whatever.
I may have. I don't remember. It was terrifying. But ghostly figures are said to travel through the house, even having been witnessed from the outside. So there are those that claim to have seen a woman wearing black staring out through the front tower window. There's also a theory going around that the home kind of changes people. So it's like there's some dark energy that kind of changes you, similar to what happened to Ronald DeFeo in the Amityville Horror House. And who knows, maybe that's why if Hans actually did kill his whole family, you know, maybe that's why. There are lots of pictures of the house pre-renovation because it has been renovated since. There isn't too much of its currently newly renovated progress state. There are articles out there that you can actually check out, though, that kind of show you it in a much nicer place. I did send Adam some pictures of it where it's like, it looks like shit because people haven't been taking care of it, okay? But the house is private property now, and it's owned by like a Norton Records or something like that, where it's just like a record warehouse. It's so many vinyl records in there. And it doesn't seem to be open to visitors. You can actually see it from the street and sidewalk, and if you're lucky, you might be able to see the woman in black staring at you through the window. But once the renovations are fully completed, the new owners, they are actually from Europe, which is really interesting. The new owners do hope to open the house as like a museum of curiosities. The pictures that I did see, of like the more renovated look to it, they have like all the photos of the members of the family hung up on the walls and stuff like that. But they do have records, like vinyl records everywhere. God dang it. And then, fun side note, apparently there are craft beers that have been themed after the house that I would love to try someday.
Of course there are.
Yeah.
Pretty sure there's craft beers for everything that exists at this point.
You think so?
They're like Ben and Jerry flavors times a billion.
Is there like a Cthulhu themed craft
guarantee
beer?
you. I guarantee you there's a Cthulhu craft beer out there somewhere.
But yeah, that's the Franklin Castle.
It's really good. That was really good.
It was just fun to do. It was interesting.
I bet you we could drive there the next time we're back in my old stomping grounds.
Ohio.
It's in Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, it's like 4 hours maybe.
Oh, really?
4 or 5, maybe a little bit further. Maybe that's Cincinnati. Either way, it's not too far of a drive. So, very curious. If anyone's been there, definitely let us know. But solid topic. Good work, Robin.
You too.
Thank you so much. It's like I said, too, if you have any experience with that, let us know. You don't have to just let us know if you've been to any of the places we cover. If you have a particular ghost story, spooky stories, spiritual, supernatural, true crime, extraterrestrial, anything like that, if you've discovered a monolith, We want to hear about it.
If you discovered a monolith.
Email storytime at scary. Oh my God, we're going to get so many boner jokes now. Damn it. Email storytime at scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on contact us. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scaryish podcast. Twitter is at scaryish pod, and Instagram is at scaryish podcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scaryish podcast, and those are monthly donations. There's a whole bunch of different tiers. Ad-free episodes start at $1, so you can hop in on the train for $1, get ad-free episodes. We also have like physical merch tiers. So this coming month, I'm going to be sending out Krampus keychains. It's December. Krampus keychains are going out. And I design everything. I package everything myself and I mail it out to everyone. So it's pretty fun, pretty cool. And then
if you're ever wondering how Robin makes all this merch, because she draws amazing designs and then gets these amazing things made, it's because we have patrons. It's because we have people that give us money monthly, and we can take that money and repurpose it to make your experience better and the podcast better. And she does so much work. And these keychains are amazing. And I'm looking at the Wendigo one hanging from her microphone right now, and it's awesome. And the Krampus one is super cool too. So check them out if you've never seen them, and then decide, is it worth signing up? Because your money not only goes to you getting something, it goes to her creating something in the future that she'll send to you, which is pretty friggin' sweet. It's like a snake eating its own tail.
Right now, too, there's actually a Patreon exclusive merch sale. So stuff that I've shipped out, like keychains, stickers, if you've missed the past months, if you join, you can actually order those specific Patreon things that you've missed. So if there's like, the Mothman keychain or the Wendigo keychain or whatever that you want, those are on there. And, so, and you can also go to Ko-fi if you're not into all of those tiers and all that stuff. If you want to go to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast. Those are one-time donations. We really couldn't do any of this without, the help from you guys. You guys keep us motivated, keep us going, give us more time to be able to create content and stuff like that. So thank you.
Indeed. So thank you one more time to everyone out there. And this is everything we have for episode 155. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.